So that is just a song that I'm working on, and I still need to write some lyrics for it. I have never written a hit song before, nor do I claim I know how to or be a award-winning lyric writer. What I can share with you is things that's helped me over 25 years of writing songs, and what has helped me write differently, express myself better, and just to make the songwriting more effective for me, for me to be more enjoyable. If you want to write hit songs, you know, maybe see what Bernie Taupin has to say on the subject of lyric writing. So here are a couple of things that I do. One, be inspired by the greats, or somebody that you think is amazing. I mean, Bob Dylan and all these guys, Johnny Cash, they are all heralded obviously as, they're almost like the classical composers of modern music in terms of lyrics. I mean, Joni Mitchell, your folk writers in general, your storytellers. But I mean, you can even look at metal guys like James Hetfield, Metallica, great lyric writer. He's got a very specific style. You know, he tends to yeah, I can't even describe it. It's he doesn't write in the active form. He writes in the passive form, which is interesting, but it's poetic and it's dramatic. There are so many great lyric writers. I mean, I look at a guy like John Beasley from Baroness, and much of what he's writing about is lost on me. I must be dead honest. It's a bit like reading a Walt Whitman poem. But it sounds great. It just sounds beautiful. It sounds dramatic. And so find inspiration from these guys. Also, you can look at writers, poets, look at the way that they structure sentences, or just be inspired so you can see what you can do and what you can't do. I mean, you have guys who writes fantastical. You've got your Tracy Chapmans of the world, which writes about current affairs and things that's now your System of a Downs, you know, which is, who knows what they always write about. Strange things. You've got your Rage Against the Machines, that is very political. You've got, I mean, if you're a Christian songwriter, there's a lot to write about there, and various ways to do it. So listen to the people that you respect and that inspires you, and even people that is different from you, even if you don't necessarily like them. I remember James Hetfield saying in an interview many, many years ago, I think it was around the Load Era album I read, and I asked him, what is he listening to currently? He says, Leonard Cohen. I really don't like the music, but the lyrics are cool. And so, yeah, challenge yourself by listening to things that maybe is a little bit out of your wheelhouse for inspiration. Number two, make notes of cool phrases. That's exactly what it is. I mean, sometimes you hear something and you think, oh, that's a cool song title. Well, write it down. I have a notepad app on my phone, and it's full of little lines, full of little words. Even some words just sound cool. Write those down and go through them and see, you know, what inspiration. Maybe if you're stuck in your songs and we go through those, you might find something there. Point number three, start with a song title. This can be challenging sometimes because it kind of forces you in a certain direction. The song doesn't necessarily take you where you might have wanted to go with, because the title kind of determines it. Or, you know, however you interact with that title is going to be a tool for creativity. But challenge yourself and say, I'm going to write a song called Warning, this cup may contain pet hair, and, you know, see what happens. It might actually drive you, and nobody says the song needs to remain with that title once it's done. It's just a way for you to get going. Number four, and I kind of mentioned this before, but your lyrics doesn't need to make sense. I think it's a bit frowned upon, maybe, but I definitely like my lyrics to make sense. I mean, I like it that the person who reads it needs to get a message, but not all music has to have a message. I mean, I don't know who really knows what Enya sings about most of the time. I think of bands like Igor, which is like a very progressive metal electronic band from France. And the lead singer, the lady who sort of sings in an operatic manner, she makes up the words that she sings. She's got like her own language, and it's about the sounds. The words that she writes, it's about how it sounds. We know that Jonathan Davis in Freak on a Leash sings like his own sort of nonsense words, but obviously that suits the title and the kind of the story that he was telling. I mean, some sort of party punk bands I know, I think it was a band called Nerf Herder or something like that, and the songwriter confessed, he says, I don't know what my songs are about. I remember, for instance, I saw Goo Goo Dolls live in 2000 here in Cape Town, and when the song Black Balloons, before they started, John Resnick just said, look, the song's called Black Balloons and I have no idea what it's about, but it sounds cool. And that's the songwriter, so it doesn't need to make sense. Just so that, I know that sometimes what happens with me is I write a song that is completely coherent and cognitively accurate, whatever is the word. Some cognition went into that. But then there's a line that doesn't make sense. And I think that's been the source of much debate in many songs. John Lennon and Paul McCartney, when he wrote Hey Jude, there's a line, I think, the hand on your shoulder or something. And I can't remember the whole story. I just remember Paul McCartney saying, and he looked over, as he was playing it to John Lennon, he said, sorry, I just put that in there because it rhymed. And John Lennon said to him, no, it sounds great. Leave it in. You don't have to change it, even if it doesn't completely make sense. So, but obviously you should read the tone of your song. I think in something like, again, worship music, writing nonsense words is probably not the best, because worship and Christian worship is a cognitive experience as well. So you need to think and know what you're singing, it's about what you mean, and the listener needs to be able to engage with that. So, I mean, there are exceptions to the rules, but that is something that I think you can now and again consider, is just write something that doesn't make any sense at all, as long as it sounds cool. Number 5, great lyrics are written and then rewritten. That is something I was told by a songwriter, James Stewart, and I think that's true. I mean, I might actually have a page of my lyrics here somewhere. Let's see. And you know, I'm definitely no Mozart. If I try and sing off these lyric sheets, sometimes I can't make out what the words are, because there's so many scratch. I mean, look at that. So, and by that time, it's often a second or a third draft. So you can rewrite a song. You don't have to write the lyrics in one sitting. I mean, you can engineer. It's your song. You know, do with it what you want, but don't be afraid to rewrite and reconsider. And if the whole song changes, that's fine as well. I mean, it's ultimately about feeling fulfilled in what you wrote. Number 6, you don't have to be controlled by rhyme or free verse. It's our tendency to want to write in rhyme. I for one like some form of rhyme, even if it's A-A-B-A or A-B-C-A or whatever, but I like rhyme. It brings, there's a flow in rhyme that I like. I don't rhyme necessarily A-A-A where it's everything rhymes, definitely not. But rhyme has definitely a place in songwriting for me. At the same token, free verse writing can be, if you're anti-rhyme, free verse writing can be as restrictive. Sometimes the rhyme words are just the best suited for your lyric. It just happens to be, coincidentally, be a rhyme word. Avoid being so dogmatic about it that you don't use the correct word so that you can stay in free verse. That's just my thoughts on it. Then the sort of musical part of it is something that I first noticed with Alanis Morissette and then Dave Matthews, an Afrikaans writer called Francois van Coke, and I've seen it in many of the modern Afrikaans rock artists. You know, I think of Fortuna Dance, Straatligkinders, Van Coke Cartel, Die Heuwels Fantasties. And what these guys have done, and obviously Afrikaans it's a Germanic language, so the phrasing is quite different, and it doesn't sit as easy as English in a rock format. So it's difficult to explain. But what I've noticed they've done, the same way that Dave Matthews and Alanis Morissette has done, is they've completely thrown conventional phrasing out of the door. It's almost like a jazz phrasing, where we kind of write our line, and it's encapsulated in the 4 bars, and it's sort of a nice beginning and end. But what I've noticed with Alanis Morissette is, especially from the second album onwards, is her line would last 1.5 bars, and then fall in the second bar. Halfway it would start a new line, but then it wouldn't maintain that rhythm. She'd only have like a short line. So almost like a disregard for conventional phrasing. Singing through the melody almost, you know, almost like non-stop, not forcing the melody in a way with the words. I found with the Afrikaans guys, they've kind of forced cumbersome words into the lyrics to the point where it actually sounds cool. You know, I would avoid big, complicated phrases because it's difficult to phrase in a song. And I've noticed these guys have really found a way to phrase and melodicize these words that traditionally wouldn't fit in these songs. I think, again, look at what Dave Matthews done. I mean, I tend to, because I'm not a sophisticated songwriter, my words tend to follow the syllables at a quarter note or eighth note pace, and variations thereof. A guy like Dave Matthews, I mean, he could be singing in 16ths and playing in quarters and vice versa, and he swaps it around. It's almost like his words sometimes have its own time signature. So that is something you can think about. Not necessarily, it might feel awkward. I think it creates tension, that type of writing, and that in itself may not be a bad thing. So consider abolishing your normal ideas about rhyme, free verse, and phrasing. Number 7, listen to the melody. What does the melody sound like as a word? I've noticed this watching videos of the making of albums, Avenged Sevenfold, Metallica, Foo Fighters, and what you see the vocalist and lyric writer most often would do is he would just hum the melody, and later and then he would write these things. But sometimes the melody can actually sound like a word. It can give you an impression of a vowel, or if you play it with maybe an instrument, play the melody with your guitar or your piano, that might actually trigger a sound in your head that sounds like that. You know, the way that we speak is melodic to a degree as well, and that you might actually get an idea for, oh, that sounds like this word or this word, and go from there. Number 8. Okay, this is something you can really see with the folk writers, and that is, have your story outline before you write the song. So you have your song, and you're like, okay, this is going to be this story, and basically compose the story in your head, and then write the lyrics to tell that story. I've made the mistake of wanting to tell a story but not knowing the story as I'm writing it, and I'm already in lyric form, and it just goes nowhere. But I find if you write with the end in mind, generally you're a little bit more cohesive in the way that you write. That has helped me just write more concisely and have a better idea of where I'm going. Number 9, and this is true for all types of music, but this is aimed more at spiritual music, worship music. I'm in a church band and worship leader, and the music that I write is now predominantly worship music. And something that I feel strongly about is there's a lot of filler words that people can use. It's just filling spaces. I find that there's a reason why you would repeat words. You even see it in the scriptures. I don't want to use the word hypnotic, but if you repeat words, it sinks in. You'll find it in a lot of old blues compositions. You know, they'll repeat lines, and that's in itself is nothing wrong with that. But I have noticed those people would have these favorite worship words that they just throw in, and you get the sense that it's for the lack of a better word or lack of a better line. Or you'll find these extremely generic praise and worship lines, and sometimes the whole song is made up of that, and even the title is that. And yes, I mean, I believe you can mean all those things 100%, but I think to improve as a songwriter, especially as a worship leader or worship songwriter, is maybe challenge your lyrics. Challenge your lyrics, you know, to see, one, are your lyrics, one, theologically accurate? Is it doctrinally sound? I think there's a lot of music out there which, without realizing it, is more modern than Christian. It's more humanist than Christian, and it sounds all good. But so challenge your lyrics, but that's a completely different point. But avoid those filler words. Yeah, you know, it's something that I think contemporary singers used to do a lot. And I feel this, and you know, another one is in this place. So you've got these filler words, and avoid them. They tend to become irritating, and it just keeps your lyrics from ringing true, in my experience. Number 10, and I'm sure there are thousands more, but in my case, something that I've realized lately that is an inspiration for lyrics is research. Last year I was spending a lot of time watching documentaries on the Second World War and the First World War, and just reading up on stuff. And what you put in definitely comes out when you start writing songs, and especially for the type of music that I write as Vortex Afternoon. And I came across this sound clip that was kind of restored in a way from the moment of the armistice that was, what, 11 November, 11 a.m. that morning, what's it, 1918? Literally the armistice happened on a particular moment. The guns literally was firing, and you could hear all these cannon shots going off, ba 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 ba, in the front line. And I think this was supposedly recorded in France, I'm not sure. And exactly at 11 o'clock it stopped. All the gunfire stopped, and after about 5 or 6 seconds you heard birds, and the birds were, it's my South African English, birds. You could hear the birds chirping, and suddenly all these normal noises, the noises of nature, was still there, and that impacted me hugely. And I read accounts of people said it was the strangest feeling. They'd be in the trench, and there was this deafening silence, and suddenly they could hear the wind again. You know, they were in years of conflict and war, and suddenly there was this, and then you started hearing people cheering. I mean, there's stories of these soldiers actually walking across the battlefield, shaking hands and having a drink together, you know, of opposing sides. So, but that impacted me hugely, and that became the lyrics to the song Armistice. And it's one of those things that I mean, and I read up on it, you know, the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Versailles, and it impacted me hugely. I mean, just it was like just reading about all that stuff. So once it came to writing the lyrics, there was a lot of research, a lot of words, and things that I could use in my song that really helped a lot. So that's it from me. Those are just 10 ideas that you could possibly use to improve your lyric writing. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It's a small channel. I will notice when you subscribe, trust me. And your comments will go answered and liked, and I will see them. And please share it with your friends, or you know, if you found it useful, maybe let me know what is useful. What are your ideas? What helps you? And you can put those in the comments. I thank you very much, and see you next time.